Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about consistency. This is a topic that comes up a lot when we're talking about goals. So we're going to dig into it a little bit today, talk about some things. I will give you some tips, but we are going to start with the definition. This is literally the first definition from the Merriam-Webster website, and it says consistency, marked by harmony, regularity, or steady continuity. Notice, it does not say daily, it does not say perfect, it does not say to the max of your abilities. It says steady and regular. So when it comes to your goals, I want you to remember that. Consistent doesn't have to mean every single day. It doesn't have to mean that it looks the same every single day. It means that it is steady and regular in some way, shape, or form. So when it comes to your goals, I do think consistency is very important, which is why I'm making a whole video on it. But I want you to remember that it doesn't have to mean that you do something every single day. I've said this in so many places. It is so hard to do something every single day, all the time. Like exactly the same. It's almost impossible because every day looks different, and because we're humans and that is how life happens. So while being consistent is important, you have to remember that consistency doesn't mean the exact same thing every single day forever. But like I said, consistency is very important to achieving your goals because consistency leads to momentum, which leads to progress. But how do we stay consistent? How do we hit that level of consistency that's going to help us achieve that momentum and achieve that progress? By making your steps even smaller. And I know some of you already knew the answer. Like you knew that was coming, right? In order to be consistent, you've got to make the steps even smaller. So when I started planning content for the new year, I put out a couple of requests asking for content ideas, for video requests or things that you wanted to see. And I got a request and I wasn't quite clear what they were referring to. So I asked them to clarify it a little bit. And this was the response that they gave me. I know you strive for tiny steps, but showing your growth over a quarter, a year, a couple of years. For example, I started a goal of drinking more water. I started by drinking 8 ounces, but grew it and now drink 96 ounces a day, which is amazing. Maybe a step-by-step process. I do see results when I start small, but man, it's frustrating in the beginning. If I could see one of your goals and see the cumulative small goals achieved, it would bring some major inspiration. And I'm sure that the person who requested this is not alone in this struggle. It gets so frustrating. I deal with this too at the beginning to really only focus on small steps. And I am sure that if you go back and watch, I've been sharing goals videos here, like my personal goal journey here on YouTube for like 3 or 4 years now. If you go back and watch all of those videos, you probably will see this. You'll see where I started with drinking water at some 8 ounces, just like the example that the person who requested it gave, right? I was drinking a small amount and I built my way up to a much higher water amount. Now, that also doesn't mean that I'm perfect. Do I still sometimes have to put water back in my goal planner in order to remind myself that it's important? Yes, I did that this month if you watch my January goals videos. So it's not always going to be perfect, but I have shared my journey on here over the years, showing a lot of these like build-ups and how I've gone from like 0 to whatever I was working towards. But in this video, what I'm gonna do is kind of combine all the thoughts I have behind this concept of small steps and consistency and give you 5 tips. 5 tips for maintaining consistency and dealing with that frustration. And then I'm gonna give you some examples built in there of my own personal goals. Tip number 1 is to start where you're at. You cannot go from wherever you're at now to wherever you wanna be if it is a big leap. If you are at one end of the spectrum and you wanna get here, starting all the way over here tomorrow is not going to be sustainable, and therefore there is no way you're going to be able to be consistent. What you have to do if you're all the way over here is pick a really small step and work on that until that is consistent. And again, whatever consistent means to you. And if you're trying to do something daily, I would say consistent is like, if you're trying to do it every day, I would say 5 to 6 days out of 7. If you're trying to do it every weekday, I would say 4 out of 5. That, to me, is how I define consistency for daily habits. You can come up with your own definitions. If it's something I'm trying to do every day, that's how I typically go about it because I know I'm gonna miss days. I'm gonna miss days, which I am jumping the gun on one of my tips. So anyways, back to our little progress bar. You pick a little small step and you do that consistently. And then you do a little bit more until you work your way up. But you have to start with where you're at. You can't just immediately jump over here on the spectrum. My best example of this, really not even my whole morning routine, it's breaking up with the snooze button. When I first decided I wanted to get serious about a morning routine, which really kind of lined up with having a YouTube channel and wanting to have that, like my best energy levels in the morning, I'll be aligned with something that was important to me. And I was snoozing for hours. Like poor Sam that my husband had to deal with this. Like it was pretty bad. I was snoozing for a very long time. And as much as I wanted to just like rip off the Band-Aid and start getting up at 6 a.m. and just executing, that was not going to be sustainable. There was no way I was going to be able to be consistent with that. So what I had to do was work my way backwards. So I took whatever time I was snoozing till, which at the time was like 8. I would literally like wake up at 8, rush, run around my apartment, quickly get ready for work, and like out the door by 8:30 to be at my corporate job by 9. That was old version of me. But I was setting the alarm for like 6 and snoozing until 8 sometimes. So one of the things that did really help with this, which is not really related to this video, but in case this is a goal that you have, is having my alarm not in the bedroom. Like I had to actually get out of bed to turn it off. But what I did in terms of starting with where I was at was, instead of trying to go from getting up at 8 a.m. at the end of my snooze fest to 6 a.m., I started setting the alarm for 7:50. And I would consistently get up at 7:50. And when I say consistent, I don't necessarily mean every day, because there were definitely times I went and got the phone and took it back to bed with me. Like I definitely did that, but consistent. And then we moved our way back to 7:40 and then 7:30 and so on and so forth, until now I pretty much consistently get up at 6. It varies all the time, but at the time, that is what I worked my way back to. But you've got to start with where you're at. Tip number 2, thought number 2, is that you've got to track it somewhere. I know that you are probably sick of me talking about tracking. I know you're sick of it. And if you're somebody who's not motivated by check marks, just skip this one, move on to the next one. I know that you've shared, like some of you shared in the comments, like that check mark concept doesn't motivate you. And if that is you, I totally understand. But why I want you to track, and what makes tracking so important, especially when it's a really small step, is so that you can see progress even when you're not feeling progress. Because when you are making those really small steps, right? You're you're drinking 8 ounces of water a day, but you're making it a priority. You might not feel more hydrated. You might not feel like you're making a dent in this ultimate goal that you were working towards. But when you're tracking it down on paper and you can see that progress, you see those check marks, you know that you're drinking more water than you were before. I know that sometimes when you're making small progress, it feels like you're standing still or going in circles. I've shared this graphic before of this, like the coil, where it feels like you're going in circles, but you're really making improvements. Small progress is still progress. That's why I've got a sticker and a cup and a bookmark, all to remind you that small progress is still progress. The best example for me in terms of this type of goal, where I started where I was at, which was 0, and tracking really helped me see my progress, that motivated me, was reading. I used to love reading. Well, I do love reading, but I loved reading a lot when I was younger, and then I fell out of it. And I think that happens to a lot of us. High school, college, we don't read as much for pleasure because we're reading so much for school, that then reading for pleasure really that's not how I want to spend my free time. Especially in college, right? That's not how you want to spend your free time. So I stopped reading. And then I was studying for my actuarial exams, so I still wasn't reading. And when I finally switched from being an actuary to working in product management, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get back into reading. I'm going to prioritize reading. And I started tracking it on Goodreads. And even if I only read 5 pages, being able to go into the app and add in what page number I was on, even if it was only 5 more pages, was so motivating for me. And being able to see the percentages of how far I was along in the books, and then my progress over my yearly goal, just all the numbers and all the tracking, I just really loved that. And that really helped me go from reading what literally was 0 books in my early 20s to, I think my peak amount read was 49 in a year, which I know some of you are reading way more than that, but for me, that was a lot. Number 3 is you've got to let go of the all or nothing mindset. I know I already talked about this. I already jumped the gun a bit. You're gonna miss a day. Period, the end. Like I said, consistency does not have to mean every single day, and you're going to miss days. There are going to be days that you don't do what you say you're gonna do or what you wanna do. Like, you're gonna miss days, and you have to be okay with that. You have to accept that you're not gonna check something off every day for forever. The example of my goals that I want to give with this is having a YouTube channel. So when I first started my channel, obviously I was at 0, right? I wasn't uploading anything. I didn't have a channel. And then it took me a while to find my rhythm of like what I wanted to do, how many videos I wanted to upload, what they were going to look like. At first I was uploading them very sporadically, and then I finally figured out a rhythm and something I wanted to do. And I said to myself, like, and there were nights that I stayed up super late or got up super early to make sure that I finished, because I said to myself, I'm never gonna miss a video. I told my subscribers that I'm gonna upload these days, at these times, I'm never gonna miss a video. If you've been around since the beginning, you know that I have missed videos. Life happens. Things happen, people get sick, I get sick. There are just going to be times that you miss something. And that example is not even a daily thing, right? When you are striving to do something daily, like I said, you're gonna miss days. But even if you're striving to do something 3 times a week, you're gonna miss days. All right, tip number 4, and I know I've talked about this with the Patreon community and some one-on-one clients, and I don't know that I've ever incorporated this into a video, and that is to not worry about the end state. We actually, you know what, maybe it wasn't a video. It really doesn't matter because it fits in with this topic. And part of the problem with feeling like that the small steps aren't adding up is that we are so focused on what we're trying to get to. We're so focused on the end state. And I'm gonna use the water for this example, right? When we sit down and we're like, okay, I know I'm not drinking enough water. And we start to Google how much water is enough water, which by the way, I have done that research. There is no right answer on how much water any of us should be drinking because there are so many factors. Where you live, what's the weather, how many vegetables did you get in, how much coffee are you drinking, literally so many factors. But you know that you're not drinking enough and you decide, okay, I'm gonna try to drink, let's use our requests example, 96 ounces. That's what I'm working towards. Now, if you've been around, you know that I recommend not measuring water in ounces, but in actual cups, which my cup is usually in arm's reach and it's not. Measure it in cups, not ounces. It's just so much easier to track and to manage. Either way, when you pick an ultimate end state, so let's say we are measuring it in cups, right? I usually have my water cup here, and right now I'm only drinking 1, but I really ultimately want to be drinking 4 of those per day. All I'm focused on is the 4. That's all I'm thinking about is the 4. And 4 might be the right number and it might not be the right number, but when all I'm focused on is that end state, I don't feel proud of the fact that I'm at 2 or at 2.5 because all I'm thinking about is how I'm not at 4. All I'm thinking about is that end state. And so sometimes it doesn't matter what the end state is. I don't care what you're trying to get to. I care where you're at now and what is that slight improvement that you're trying to make. The other reason is you might decide that that ultimate number is not right for you. You might decide that when you feel like you drink X amount that the internet says you should, you actually feel like you're gonna explode and that it's not comfortable for you and that your feel good amount of water is a lower number. So when you worry about that end state, it might not even be the right number for you. Also, I don't feel like I need to caveat this, but just in case, I am not a nutrition expert, not a nutritionist, not a diet coach, any of those things. I am sharing these examples with you from my own personal experience that I thought I needed a certain amount of water. And over time, I built my way up to an amount that felt right. And it happened to be a different number than what I originally set out to go about achieving. So to the best of your ability, let go of that end state. Let go of what you're trying to get to and focus on where you're at right now, especially if that number is higher than where you were before, and be proud of that and focus on the improvements that you are currently making. All right, and tip number 5 is something that I have recently been trying to start talking about more, is that we don't always have to be adding to it. We don't always have to be increasing. Just because you're doing something consistently doesn't mean that the next week or the next month you have to add to it. Maybe you want to keep it the same and you're at that sweet spot, or maybe you're just not ready to up it to that next level yet, or maybe you have a really busy month and if you up it to that next level, you know that you're probably not going to hit this. You saw me do this with my step goal at the end of last year, right? I had a step goal and I set it and then I freaking crushed it and I leveled it up to the next level, but that next month looked so different that then I didn't hit any of those the next month. And so reminding yourself that you do not need to always be increasing your goals. Keeping it the same and staying consistent with that is sometimes more valuable than upping it and becoming inconsistent. Because again, consistency leads to momentum, which leads to progress. And while we're talking about it, sometimes you need to go backwards, and that is also not failing. If you are doing something consistently, but something in your life changes, it is okay to decrease that in order to keep that consistency. You saw me do this in December with working out, right? I was consistently working out 30 minutes a day, somewhere between 3 and 4 times a week. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep going with that. And then in December, and it rolled around and there was no way I was gonna fit that in with everything else I had going on. So I dropped that workout goal down to 10 minutes for each workout session so that I would be able to maintain that consistency. It is okay to go backwards. Not failing, just readjusting based on what else you have going on. We are going to talk way more about consistency and how it relates to momentum and progress and all of those things at the workshop, which is later this week. If you're watching this video the week it goes live, the workshop is on Saturday, the 21st at 1 p.m. Eastern. All the in-person tickets are sold out, but you can still join us virtually, and you can either join us live and participate in the chat and ask questions, or you can catch the replay. The workshop is going to be all about motivation and how to carry that January motivation through the rest of the year. So I'll leave the ticket link down below. If you liked this video, if you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, please click that subscribe button. I upload new videos every week focused on helping you achieve your goals. Thank you so much for watching. Consistently leads to momentum. Consistently